Hey everybody, welcome back to The Beard and the Bald. I am Paul Shirey the Beard, joined by my compatriot the Bald, Christopher Bumbray. Christopher, how are
Oh,
you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a minute. We've been off the grid, busy doing life shit. And everything just kind of taking its course, but we squeeze them in where we can. So here we are, we're back, and we're gonna talk some shit. Right, Chris?
Oh yeah, lots of shit. Hey, you know what I've been watching the last week? I still can't really talk about it, but I finally finished. I finished it. I was waiting on the last episode and finally came. Cobra Kai season 5.
Oh yeah, you had mentioned you'd gotten the
Yeah.
screeners for that. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. I'm looking forward to talking about that, but I can't talk about it yet. But I am looking forward to it.
So you just wanted to brag about it, is what you're saying, that
Yeah,
you
yeah.
watched
Just bragging, just bragging.
it. I get it. I get it. Yeah, I would brag too. I actually emailed them and never heard back. So they're probably just like, yeah, fuck you, you're not getting it. So it's like, all right, I guess I'm not cool enough to get the screeners anymore. But that's okay. That's okay. I'll be fine. So Chris, we haven't talked about something really big that's been going on the past couple weeks, or 3 weeks, maybe even. Um, so Warner Brothers is shaking some shit up, and they made some waves with David Zaslav, the new CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery. Basically took the axe to quite a few things, including the Batgirl movie starring
Yeah,
Leslie Grace and
which had
Michael Keaton.
already kind of wrapped. It's funny. I'm having a feeling now that we're never going to see Michael Keaton as Batman again. Like
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if the Flash is going to come out. I've seen footage of him as Batman, and I've seen a little bit of the Flash, and it looks amazing. Like, and it's apparently one of the highest testing movies in their history. I wonder if we're going to actually see it though, and I hope that we do, despite all the bullshit that's going on with Ezra Miller. I
yeah.
do feel kind of bad for the Batgirl. I mean, listen, it probably wasn't that great of a movie, and I know your take on it was always if it's bad, just don't bother putting it out. That said, the movie's finished. I still think it should come out somehow. I think they can release it and they could say, hey, this is, we're not going down this road, but here's the movie anyway. I get why they're not doing it. It's a business decision, but it's always, I don't like the idea of something being shelved, even if it's terrible, right? Like even something like that Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie, I feel like it deserves to be seen, right? I just don't like the idea of people shelving movies. I mean, there's a Jerry Lewis movie, The Day the Clown Cried.
Yep.
Like I think this stuff should be out. If it's made and it's a finished film, I get it when they abandon something halfway through. That's fine. But this movie, it sounds like it's pretty much done. Even if it's absolutely terrible, and there's a very good chance that it is, I still think it should be out there.
Well, apparently the test screenings, even though they've tried to downplay it to say they were fine, they were about normal, sounds like they were really not good. And
Well, I
my
mean, it
my
sounds
feeling
like they were
is,
in the 60s, which is not great, and it's probably not a great movie, but
yeah.
I still
Well,
think it should be
it's
out there.
not. It wasn't budgeted for $100 million movie. It wasn't, or like a big budget like theatrical film. And it sounds like now with Zaslav and them, they are, they want theatrical films. They
Yeah, and I get it, and I think they had business doing HBO Max movies like that. Like Batgirl. What's the point if it's not good enough to go to theaters? Then why bother making it? Right? It's the
Yeah.
same thing with some of these Disney Plus movies.
Yeah.
Like they're
They're
never going
they are
to.
obviously low rent, and it's a complaint you and I have both had, even with the Netflix movies like The Gray Man at $200 million. Where's the $200 million at? Like these
I
movies.
mean, even I watched Day Shift recently, which was fine, but it's just like again, it's what there's nothing exceptional about it
Yeah.
though. Like, get me like I want to see a real theatrical. Like people are talking about should Netflix movies go theatrical? I haven't seen one since probably Power of the Dog that I would say deserve to be seen theatrically. And even Power of the Dog, it might have opened theatrically. It's not like anybody would have actually gone to see it.
Yeah. Well,
But
wasn't Power of the Dog acquired? That wasn't a
no,
Netflix
it wasn't.
movie.
It was bought. It was
Yeah,
paid
it
for
was
by.
bought.
I think Netflix's award stuff is on one level because they're actually pumping cash into it,
Yeah.
right? But I think that the blockbusters they do, it's not that they're pumping cash into it, but I think that a lot of the money that we're seeing when we're hearing these $200 million deals, that's not $200 million on the screen. That's like actors that are getting huge
Yeah.
paychecks and the Russo brothers that are getting huge paychecks that are getting paid way above what they would get paid for a Hollywood movie. And I
Yeah.
think that's where people get confused. I would
Well, it's
imagine the
like,
shooting budget of the Gray Man was probably significantly lower than anything that we saw theatrically this year on a big level. It's just the fact is all this money is going into their pockets, and that's why Netflix keeps getting these amazing people because yeah, off of the event. I mean, that's why Russo brothers doing their next movie for Netflix, and they're still trying to spin that movie like it's been successful. But I mean, if you look at the top 10 Netflix movies, it hasn't been that big. There's a movie out called Purple Hearts, which is, been watched by more people now, and it costs like nothing. I think those are probably the kinds of movies that Netflix needs to be making, kind of lower budget, more niche films. Leave something like The Gray Man for a major studio to do. And the whole thing is, should Netflix be putting movies out theatrically? I don't think they should unless they have something that's actually worth going out.
well, if
That's
it's not going to look theatrical, if everything is going to look like it was shot on a green screen, I think what's ended up happening is these budgets, they're kind of like big old pork spending bills in Congress, right? Where like it's like, where does the money go? It's
where
going to
is
all
the
this
money going?
bullshit.
Exactly. And that's a big thing. I mean, you have a star-studded cast. They're getting huge paychecks that are way bigger than they would if they were signing on for like a
With
Disney.
their back end worked in initially because there's
Oh,
not
no.
going to be a theatrical box office back end. So
And that
they're
all
getting
comes out of the budget. And that all comes out of the budget.
yeah, it's like with The Rock, isn't he getting something like 50 million for the red one, which he's doing for Amazon Prime? Something ridiculous. He has like this ridiculous payout because he's not going to get a back end because there is no back end.
So I would say that $200 million budget for the Gray Man probably means about 100 million, to be honest, if even.
Yeah.
So so I think that's probably one of the issues that they're having. And it's not that it looks necessarily cheap, but I also think that Netflix, they've got their own in-house production that does their effects, and I just find that they all kind of look the same.
Yeah, they look like green screen, like the Adam Project, which I quite like the Adam Project. I thought that was one of the outliers of their original movies, but even that, it still looks like, did you shoot anything on location? Like,
yeah,
was it
and
that hard?
kind of tell. I mean, it was COVID times too, but you can always kind of tell. And I don't know. I mean, Batgirl though, like I do think that I don't think it should have ever been made in the first place. To be honest, if you're gonna do a movie like that, you need to do it at the best level that you possibly could, rather than just cheapening it out. And
Well, especially if you got Keaton involved and all
yeah,
that. But this is also a situation where this was greenlit before the Warner Brothers Discovery merger happened. So ultimately, Zaslav and their team, he's coming in and he's like, well, fuck, we got this Batgirl movie sitting here. And he's like, well, why are we fucking around with this? We need movies that are going to theaters.
yeah.
And
But
how is that going to mess with the overall look and vibe? It's like, is it going to make everything look worse, especially if it's a piece of shit? And I think the other interesting thing too, when you mentioned Michael Keaton, was the fact that Affleck came back again to shoot a cameo, probably as Bruce Wayne in Aquaman 2. And originally it was said that Michael Keaton had shot that scene. So it sounds to me like they're like, okay, Batgirl's got to go, so we got to fill this gap here, but we can't have Keaton in Aquaman 2 because the audience is going to be confused. Why the fuck is Michael Keaton there when you don't have that bookend of Batgirl that would explain it? So, as you said, I am wondering myself, what the fuck are they going to do with the Flash? This is a $200 million major
it's the
tentpole
movie that needs
film.
to come now. That's the thing. Like it needs and this would be the ideal time for it, but it's just they've got a real problem with Ezra Miller. But I think they just have to go ahead and release it.
Yeah.
Trust that people will use judgment.
I asked my son yesterday, who's 13, just to out of curiosity to hear like what other kids were thinking. I was like, because he knows a little more than most, but I was like, what do you think of Ezra Miller? And he goes, isn't he like a child molester? And I was like, no, I don't think he's a child molester. I don't think that's like, there's some weird charges, but not like child molesting. He's like, whatever. And I was like, so would you still see The Flash in theaters? And he's like, yeah, of course. So
yeah. So just put it out and put it
there
out.
You have it. I mean,
recast the Flash later. I mean, who cares?
I mean, yeah, exactly. Why not put it out, see what happens? But then again, if Zaslav and his team, as they've said, they're trying to make this 10-year plan for DC, which I think is smart, by the way, because they've been treating this kind of like very Lucasfilm new Star Wars trilogy where they're just like, let's just do whatever. Now that we fucking fired Zack Snyder and his crazy vision, which I would have supported, I would have loved to have his vision at this point. They're like, now that we got rid of him, let's just make one movie after the next and see what happens. But now Zaslav and them are taking this, the Marvel model, which they should have just ripped it off. You know what I'm saying? Just rip it off and just do it. Just do your thing, but just steal that model. Make your films in that mode. And it sounds like that's what they're doing. So if they are doing that, then I think that definitely puts in question how they're going to proceed with something like The Flash. Because is it too much?
The thing I really don't like about the Zaslav thing, though, is that I don't like the contents being pulled from HBO Max just to vanish. I don't like that they're removing movies because they weren't watched or whatever, and they're never going to get seen again. Like one of them was Charm City Kings, which is a pretty great film, I thought. And that's just vanished now. You can't get it. I don't like that movies are being pulled.
But you could still buy them if you really want them. They just aren't.
Well, can you though? I mean, for how long? Like I feel like these movies are just going to vanish and they're going to become like lost movies.
But nobody's watching them anyways.
You never really own anything on digital either. That's the big thing that everybody.
Sure, but I mean, I'm sure you could buy it on DVD. But even then, it's like, is it really a streamer's responsibility to maintain that? Because they have to.
So if you buy the movie, yeah, I think you have.
But they're not. But essentially, they're not buying the movie. They're paying for the rights to stream it for a certain amount of time. And they don't own the rights for life.
Well, so no, it's an HBO Max movie now, though. That's the thing. Like, and a lot of these things are specifically they were made for HBO Max. HBO Max didn't just buy the rights to stream them; they bought the rights to the movie forever. It's an HBO Max production. It's not like a movie that HBO Max just happened to be streaming. So a lot of
those, but HBO puts all their shit on disc though. They're not like Netflix where they don't put.
Well, I know it depends though, but you might not be able to get it at some point, or they might start, or they might. I don't know. It gives me.
Well, all the people that want to watch American Pickle again and again, they'll just have to suffer. It'll just have to.
Even if you didn't like the movie though, I think it still deserves to be seen, or to have a venue, or to have a place that it's available. I don't know. I just don't like the idea of them removing big chunks of their library because they perceive it as having no value. Like it's fucking streaming. Everything could be on there, but whatever.
I mean, I don't know. I can see both sides. As an artist, I hate to see anybody's work be like taken down or whatever. But at the same time, I see it is a venue. They did pay for that art to be made. It's like if you paid for a mural to be painted on a wall on a building, and then you're like, well, we want to change this out. We don't want this. We want it all needs to be a uniform color. Do they have the right to do that? Well, they did pay for it. Is it shitty? Sure. But they do have the right to do it. So I don't know. It's kind of, it's a tough one. It really is. And interesting. Like you have Charm City Kings. Interestingly enough, the director is making Blue Beetle.
Yeah. So, which, for a while looked like it might go the way of Batgirl. Hopefully it'll come out. It
sounds like they put more money into Blue Beetle at the right time. So they kind of got in there. They're like, well, let's bump this up to theatrical. So that one just got saved. So, but we'll see. That's going to have a tough road though, in terms of like living up even if it like got that money late in the game. Hopefully it's enough. But I'm interested to see where all of this goes. If anything, it's just good drama. It's just good drama to watch and see like what the fuck's going on. It's like kind of fun.
I don't like this whole turn though, that they're just taking movies away and not putting them out. And I think that these people deserve to have their movies seen, regardless if they're good or not, even if they're bad, whatever. If it's a piece of shit, let's watch it and let's all say it's a piece of shit. But I still think it should come out.
Well, I think that's what they're trying to avoid is like the bad press in that sense. So
who cares? Put it out. I don't give a fuck.
I know, but they do. It'd be interesting. Who knows? Like, but if they take the tax break on Batgirl, which is what apparently they're trying to do, then apparently they can't stream it for profit in any way. No. So however they'll work that, I don't know.
It might leak illegally like Fantastic Four did. Who knows?
Hey, maybe so. Maybe that's the best way to do it. And maybe they leak it and all of a sudden people are like, holy shit, this is actually amazing. And then,
that wouldn't be good for them either.
It wouldn't, but hey, who knows?
In other news, Top Gun Maverick continues to climb up the chart for one of the most popular movies of all time. Boy, that's been a much bigger hit than anybody anticipated, eh?
Yeah.
Even when I saw it at CinemaCon, I knew it was good. I didn't know it would be as big as it was, but I'm glad. I'm very glad that it is.
So I wrote a story yesterday about how it's like kind of flying past, and Jerry Bruckheimer had commented about, why he thinks it's so successful. And I thought it was interesting because, he was like, well, and he wasn't trash talking Marvel and DC, but he was like, I see these movies, they're very, effects laden. I love them. I see them the same as everybody else. But I think that audiences want to see something real. They want to see something that's big and something that's, that
100%.
feels real and immersive. And, he thinks is, the main appeal of Top Gun. And also that it's just a great story with great acting, which is true. But it is interesting that Top Gun thus far, and most likely, unless Avatar 2 or Black Panther kind of just blows up, which is possible, Top Gun 2 could very well be the highest grossing movie of the year. It's entirely possible. It just passed Avengers Infinity War for all-time domestic, number 6 spot. And there's a good chance, I mean, it needs 12, or was it 17 million? I think 17 million more to unseat Black Panther. Now, Top Gun Maverick doesn't come out on Blu-ray DVD until November 1st. It comes out on streaming this week, but it's not going to disc until November, which means it could sit in theaters till November. It very well could unseat Black Panther.
I hope it does. I hope it does. I mean, it is a great movie, and it's old school kind of, filmmaking, and that it has a good story and it has a very clear structure. It doesn't bombard you with too much visual stimuli in the way that the Marvel movies do. I mean, the thing about the Marvel movies is that they're all the same to me at this point. I just feel like I'm, being fed the same thing over and over and over again. I mean, I tried to watch She-Hulk yesterday, and I just felt like I'd seen it before. My attention was just wandering. And it's the same thing happens anytime that Marvel insignia comes up. I'm kind of like zoning out a bit, just because it feels like I've seen all this before. I've seen every permutation of this superhero story before, and everything they're doing is so unoriginal. Even She-Hulk, I've seen it before. It's Ally McBeal, and she's a Hulk. Oh, great! What else? I mean, I've seen this before.
Yeah.
Like, there's no great drama, and it's all just kind of humor that's recycled from Twitter. I kind of like the Captain America virginity thing. Like, I'm not invested enough in these characters to care. That's the thing. If he's a virgin, and I find that that's one of the problems with Marvel. It's that it's spent too much of it. If there was like half or less than half or a third of what they've done, I think people would still be excited about these movies. I mean, I remember when Marvel, they used to put a movie like one out a year or one every 2 years, and you'd really be excited because it would be like an event. But now it's just constantly coming out, and you're sick of it. I don't want to watch it anymore. Like, I've had it. It's like when you when you eat a candy bar and it tastes great, but you eat like 20 of them in a row, you feel sick, right? And it feels like that for Marvel. And I think the thing that's appealing about something like Top Gun Maverick is that it's a throwback to an older kind of movie, that tells a good story. I mean, I had a great experience last week in the theaters just going to see Beast with Idris Elba, and it was a 90-minute movie, not going to change the world, but it had a very clear story. It had good characters. It started without too much of a prelude. It had a good theme, some good action. It was over in one ear out the other, and I missed that kind of movie, to be honest. Like, just a good, nifty programmer, because we don't get that anymore.
It doesn't ask you to invest in
and everything's
where it's like,
up.
I gotta come back to get an ending. Oh my god, what the fuck?
Let's make it 3 hours long, and let's put like, it's just like, this was Beast, $30 million movie, 90 minutes.
Yeah,
perfect. In, out, done.
Well, and my curiosity with Top Gun is, or my hope rather, not so much my curiosity, is that this will inspire studios to start investing in non-superhero movies and really not lean so much into a franchise, but lean into making one good film. Could you make a Top Gun 3? Absolutely, you can make a Top Gun 3.
That is the lesson they need to learn, but I fear it's not a lesson anybody's going to learn. I feel like now it's just going to be, what old IPs can we reignite? I mean, Ferris Bueller now. They're going to do a spinoff about the parking lot attendants. Like, who the fuck needs that The only thing that's kind of interesting is the fact that some of the guys from Cobra Kai are involved, because that's another show. It shouldn't work, but it does.
Yeah,
You
Cobra
know,
Kai
and
somehow is
yeah,
amazing. I'm sure season 5 is amazing.
yeah, it's my favorite season so far. But it's just like but the thing is, do we really need to know what the fucking parking lot attendants were up to in the Corvette? Like, do we? Who cares?
I don't think we need
And
it.
who's gonna play them? The guys are like in their 70s now, so who's gonna
Well,
play these two?
the one guy is dead. The black guy is dead, and
Richard Edson's still alive.
I think Richard Edson's still alive, but it takes place during that time period. It's that day, so
So I mean, who are you going to
Edson
cast
couldn't play.
these guys?
You'd have to get different actors to play them. But
Well, they're going to, and it just I mean, you're going to have like CGI fucking Matthew Broderick, and then are we going to have a CGI Jeffrey Jones too, so that child molester can get some money? Like, I mean, you know, it's like who you know, it's like I don't understand what the point of any of this shit is. Like,
well, I think the worst thing they could do is try to make a sequel at this point, unless I feel like there could be a great script for Ferris.
Yeah, there could be a really good Ferris Bueller's Day Off sequel. I've always viewed Election as kind of a non-official Ferris Bueller's sequel, where the guy just became a totally burnt out fucking teacher living this desperate life. I
think he could. Well, yeah, I love Election. It's a great fucking movie, but I think that there's a story. I think that you could do a Top Gun Maverick style Ferris Bueller sequel, but it would take like a really great script,
yeah,
a great idea, something that's emotional, something that's.
And we don't have a lot of John Hughes up there, you know, like that's kind of the thing. It's like, you know, I mean, they're lucky they found kind of another Tony Scott, Joseph Kaczynski in some ways, you know, like and they had really good writers. And the thing is, Top Gun Maverick shouldn't have worked. It does because Cruise wouldn't allow it to get made until it did work, and it took 30 plus years.
Well,
So
he was also adamant not to do a sequel for a long time. But then the other thing too is that, you know, Cruise fought really hard for this to be in theaters because Paramount wanted to put this shit on streaming during.
And that seems completely insane, doesn't it?
Because you think about that now, Paramount's probably they're like looking at each other like, "Whoo, fuck."
It was a big gamble, and Cruise bet on himself. But you know, I mean, that's the magic of Tom Cruise. I mean, the thing is, if you watch Tom Cruise being interviewed, if you've talked to Tom Cruise, if you've done anything, if you've seen any of the behind the scenes, the belief that he has in himself, Paul, I don't think you and I could ever understand.
Yeah.
Because the guy has no self-doubt. He believes when he does a dangerous stunt, he knows he's going to be fine. He knows it.
He's like, I'm an alien, bro.
Yeah, and it's like this self-confidence that he has is truly alien because there's not a moment of doubt. There was a point I was watching a behind the scenes thing from Mission Impossible at CinemaCon where he's pretending to be scared before the jump. And it was obviously bullshit. He's not scared. He's not scared.
He's excited. He's not scared.
Not the least bit scared. He knows he's fine. He knows he's going to be able to do it. And you know, it's funny. He's 60 years old. I was just thinking about it yesterday. He's 60 years old. I would buy him playing a character that was in his 30s. I really would.
Yeah. You probably
only person I would totally buy that.
Well, that's like Keanu Reeves. When he took John Wick, he told Derek Kolstad, he was like, you know, because it was written for like Clint Eastwood. It was written for an old man. And Keanu Reeves was like, I'm gonna play him 35. And they're like, cool, all right. You know, and Keanu was almost 60. So it's pretty interesting. You know, there are some actors out there, some actresses too, that can play much younger, and get away with it.
I've always found that Julianne Moore is kind of ageless. She's always kind of seemed the same age for the last like 20 years.
Yeah, she's been that way for a while. I don't think so as much anymore, but definitely for a long time she held on to.
Well, I saw her in a movie recently, Gloria Bell, and I thought she looked very young in it. You know, and it was just like a year or so ago.
Maybe she had some work done. Who knows? So yeah, well, we covered Ferris Bueller. Let's talk about House of the Dragon. Did you watch it last night?
Yeah, no, I'm probably gonna watch it tonight. I'm not very enthusiastic though. I mean, I just
really. How come?
I don't know. It's just, you know, I'm not excited by it because the thing about House of the Dragon is it doesn't look like it has a really compelling lead character for me to invest in. You know, I mean, the thing about Game of Thrones, you know, I knew when it started, Jon Snow, this is the guy I'm going to be following for the next couple seasons, right? And I liked him, you know, and I knew that I'd like Arya. Oh, this is an character who's really going to grow, you know, has a heroic quality. You know, you know, Peter Dinklage is Tyrion. You know, I hadn't really seen that before. You know, I hadn't really seen a character that was a dwarf that had that kind of storyline, and he's a great actor. But
Yeah.
I watched this and it just seems like a lot of like backstabbing and political maneuvering. Who's my hero there? Like it just doesn't look like there's anybody that I can really invest in.
I mean, you're not completely off base
And
there.
there's like no, what great mythology is there going to be? Because I know how the story ends. Like it's
Well,
not.
there's some pretty, I don't know. I mean, I read Fire and Blood. I read the book it's based on, which is it's like a history book. It's not a novel like the Game of Thrones books. So there's a lot of room there to kind of flesh the characters out. But yeah, there's not a Jon Snow in this story, at least not that's emerged thus far. Um, I watched it last night with my wife. We enjoyed it. And she made a comment. She was like, this is like, it's kind of like comfort food. And I think
Mhm.
that's a true statement because, the newness of Game of Thrones is it'll never be replicated, right? Like
Yeah,
that's been done.
as hard
But
as they try.
it's kind of like going home in a way. It's like you've like the atmosphere, the characters, the setting, everything. Like it looks great. The money is on the screen. The acting is top notch, but it definitely feels like you're kind of like the Targaryens have kind of like proven to be evil, right? For lack of a better term, like they've just proven to be evil in the long run of things. So it is hard to be like, oh, I'm going to invest in these. This would be my hero when it's kind of like, that none of them are going to come out heroically in that sense because they're always kind of like pieces of shit. But there are characters from other houses, other names. So there's a lot of names that pop up that are, you're like, you'll notice, you'll be like, oh, Baratheon and blah, 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 blah. So it's interesting. It's compelling. It's fun. Is it as good as the original Game of Thrones thus far? I think it's too soon to say. You have 8 seasons of a show that you can judge versus 1 episode so far. But we enjoyed House of the Dragon, watching the first episode, and I'll absolutely watch the rest without question. Um, but to say like, oh, I like it so much better than Game of Thrones, it would be crazy because it's just fun.
I mean, that reminds me a little bit, of Better Call Saul, right? And the thing about Better Call Saul was that I knew that this was a guy that ultimately was dishonest, but there was something compelling about him being an anti-hero and seeing how he got to that position, and but also right from the beginning, you invested in Kim Wexler too, who turned out to be a great character as well. And there were other good characters in that show. And I did you watch the finale of Better Call Saul?
I didn't watch any of Better Call Saul.
Oh, well, I mean, it has an amazing finale. It has one of the best series finales ever, in my opinion. That just kind of, you know, it leaves all the characters suffering with the fallout, the consequences from their actions. It really does. Nobody gets away scot free, regardless of whether or not in the end they're ultimately a sympathetic character or not. Even Kim Wexler, who I feel like the show was trying to set her up as sympathetic a lot, made some terrible decisions and did some very selfish and evil things and will ultimately have to live with it the rest of her life. And I think that that's the thing that's refreshing about the show is that it doesn't judge the characters, but it shows that you do bad things in life, you have to live with the consequences of it, especially if you're a good person and what you did was wrong.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate message of the show, I think. And it was, but at the end they're living more honest lives, and there's a chance that if not redemption, somewhat of a
Sure.
redemption, but you're going to lose something, and there's going to be something that's going to hang over you the rest of your life. And I thought it was an amazing ending for the show. It was terrific. Um, but I don't know that something like House of the Dragon is going to have a moral like that or a story like that. Like it just feels like it's kind of, for lack of a better word, just it was what was it? Ian McShane always called Game of Thrones tits and dragons. And it's like, fine, that's fine if that's what you want to see. That's fine. Lots of
There
dragons.
are tits and dragons in House of the
Sure, great, okay. But Game of Thrones ultimately there was something more to it, that kept me compelled throughout the seasons, and I think it was the characters.
Yeah.
But it did
You
start to
had
lose.
you had a duality of good and evil with Game of Thrones. I mean, even Jon Snow at some points you might have questioned some of his motives or his actions, but in the end, Jon Snow was a good guy. Like he was a heroic good guy. But even as a heroic good guy in that sense, he was still, he killed a lot of people
Sure.
and you could say, well, they were all bad people. It's like, well, maybe. Um, Ultimately, he just, that was just the side that he chose, and the other side lost. But I'm definitely more interested and compelled by a Jon Snow spinoff Game of Thrones show than I am for House of Dragon.
Yeah.
I think the reason
I feel like I am too
invested,
because I know that character. I know what
yeah,
he is, and I'd like to see what his new adventures are.
yeah, and we're invested. Yeah, exactly. So we're invested in a character like that, and it goes beyond even George R. R. Martin's books, presumably, which probably will never be finished.
I mean,
So at this point, it's like, just continue it, continue that story. You have a great character, you have an actor that embodies that character exceptionally well. uh Continue it, keep it going. And I do feel like that's a far more interesting thing to see, what happens with Jon Snow leading the wildlings beyond the now gone wall. What happens? I think that's just a far more compelling thing. And we never saw Daenerys like was 100% dead. I don't think
no, I
she's
mean
dead.
it's all soft deaths. I think
Yeah,
on that.
so I feel like there's just a lot more that you can mine from that, more so than seeing what happened, 200 years prior or whatever.
I just hope that the people that they get to do it are talented enough to really make it as good as it should be or it could
Yeah.
be.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. That's always a question. Um, and that's one of the problems that I've seen with, a lot of these shows, particularly the Marvel shows that have been coming out, is they keep handing these over to showrunners that have kind of a take, right? Rather than looking at the material on the whole and say, how do I make a great show? They're like, how do I make this show about what my socio-political commentary and everything else is? It's just like, it's getting exhausting. So hopefully they'll just make something that is well in line with what
Well,
Weiss and
bring
Benioff
bringing
created.
it to She-Hulk. What did you want to say about She-Hulk? Obviously, that was a She-Hulk reference.
Well, it's not just She-Hulk, it's every fucking, Marvel show that I've watched thus far. And I feel like I keep giving them I feel like I keep getting just suckered. Like I keep watching these all, and I watch them. Like I watch fucking Moon Knight. I watch, the first episode of She-Hulk. I watch all this stuff, and I'm just like, am I enjoying any of this? I'm not. She-Hulk, I didn't dislike that much. I actually kind of enjoyed it. I thought it was kind of a fun start. I liked the fourth wall breaking stuff. I thought that I thought that Tatiana Maslany's little like speech about her anger, I thought that was lame, but it's like I just rolled my eyes and just continued watching and enjoyed the other
Well, you're
stuff.
always going to have some of that shoved in there, it seems.
Always. But that's the thing. It's like it's like you can count on it now. And it's like, why? Like just make a good fucking show already. But I do feel like one of the biggest issues that I've seen, and I keep seeing this pop up, is this review bomb shit where they're like, oh, it's been review bombed and it's getting review bombed. And I'm like, okay, what is the definition of review bomb? A review bomb in my mind would be, and not even in my mind, it's the definition is like you're supposed to bomb a show before it comes out, right? That's a review bomb. So what are we calling all the reviews that come out after the show that say it sucks? Are we, and is it all of them just angry white males that hate a show, or is it people that just like don't like the show and are expressing their opinion? At
Look,
some point,
I'll say this. We posted a She-Hulk review last week that was positive, and the comments were awful, and we definitely were bombed in terms of the comments. So,
sure,
and I'll tell you,
that's a review
100%.
bomb. But
So that is happening. So there is review bombing that's going on, and it is
sure,
people that aren't even going to bother to watch the show. A lot of them
sure,
probably have, so that is a reality. That is something that's happening.
right.
I
That
think
is
you
the
can
definition of a review bomb.
I think you
But
can overcome it though. Like I think Prey was probably getting review bombed at first, but then I think people actually watched it and then enjoyed it, and then it kind of came around a little bit, like and I wouldn't say that it is now. It seems like they kind of won people over with that one. Um,
well,
and She-Hulk might do the same thing too.
I think with Prey it was just a simple people liked the movie. I don't think it
Yeah,
was, and that's the thing is like a review
they
bomb
did, but
is
people went
definitely
into it. But people went into it wanting to hate it though. I can tell you 100%. Whenever we used to
for
post
Prey.
stories, we were like, "Oh, it looks too woke," and blah 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 blah. And there is a propensity for some of these kind of guys that do the review bombing to kind of see something with a woman of color as the lead, and they're like, "Oh, it's gonna be too woke." That's always the excuse, right?
Sure,
And
sure.
it's often not the case. Sometimes it is the case, but often not. And I think with Prey, it definitely wasn't too woke. Like
No, I don't
And
think.
wokeness. I mean, like woke, it's become this bad word. I think people, it's like this evil thing to be woke, for certain people. And I don't know. It feels like it's gotten a bad rap over the years. There is like,
Well, I think
I
it's
don't.
become a thing. It's kind of it's
I mean,
become.
I don't like it when it's a commodity that people are trying to push, and I think that Marvel is commodifying it,
Yeah.
and I think it's bad that they're doing that. But I don't think that having somebody, aware of certain things and aware of biases which do exist, I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with that. The problem is Marvel is and Disney in general, they're just always patting themselves on the back for like,
Yeah.
hey, look at how fucking like virtue signaling for themselves, and
Yeah.
it's and a lot of
Well, I
times
think
it's
that's a bigger thing. I mean, that's what it is, right? Is they make a show of it. When you can just make it without making a show of it, I think that's when it feels genuine and it feels real and it feels like
and I
something.
think that's what was the difference between Prey, which ultimately is Disney as well. But I think that's the difference between Prey and
Yeah.
something else. But I didn't think that Hulk was that for lack of a better term woke. It was there is
I
that
don't
kind
feel
of
like She-Hulk was
eye rolling
woke.
moment, but there's always been those eye rolling moments. There were eye rolling moments like that in Avengers Endgame as well. This big one.
Oh,
So it's just kind of
it
it is what it is.
definitely was.
It's just always going to be there. They're always going to shoehorn it in somewhere.
Yeah, and it's just obnoxious, and it just the thing is, it just reeks of being disingenuous, and it's insulting. You know, I
Well, that is
and
the thing. It is disingenuous though, because a lot of times it's not authentic.
and I find it insulting to the people that it's supposedly trying to like pump up. Like if I was a person of color for a lot of that stuff, or if I was a female, I'd be like, "Fuck you, Marvel!" Like, kiss my ass. Like, how is this representing me? You're like trying to like showcase this thing, just pat yourself on the back. It's like that is not the proper representation. That's not. You're just basically putting stuff in there to try and make yourself look better rather than put something in genuinely. Like whatever happened to that? Why is that such an issue?
And I
Uh,
think ultimately that's why something like Prey really worked because it's not
yeah.
them just shoehorn shit in. It's
Well,
like, no,
and
let's
that
tell a
was
good story.
Trachtenberg's concept from the
Yeah.
get-go, from the drop was I'm going to make this, movie. It's going to have female protagonists, the Comanche Nation, et cetera, et cetera. Like that was his concept from the beginning. And
There was this rumor that people were talking about beforehand that it was going to end with the Predator and the girl teaming up to take on the real enemy, the white man. That's not what happened. But I was like, that sounded so stupid. It's like everybody was sure that was what was going to happen in the movie. I'm like, I don't think so.
yeah, I think I remember seeing something like that. But,
Yeah.
here's the thing with like review bombing too, is that, review bombing happens. I'm not saying review bombing doesn't exist. I'm saying that at some point there is a separation where people have seen it and don't like it. And you can't just lean like, oh, it's review bombed, it's review bombed, it's
No,
review.
and
Like
it's not. And I
at
mean,
some point, you're
I
gonna have
think
to accept that maybe your show fucking sucks.
yeah, and there's a
Maybe,
lot of valid criticisms of shows out there, but I do find that, sometimes they're not valid.
sure, but I think you could find that with any property. People you read opinions all the time. You're just like, oh my god, this person is a fucking idiot. I see it all the time on anything, on anything. You know,
It's weird. I'm more inclined to believe that a Marvel fan genuinely doesn't like something rather than it's just review bombing. But I feel for Star Wars, I don't, I feel like that is prone to review bombing because I think people get so emotional and precious about Star Wars that they're not able to be objective anymore. And I don't really understand why. Whereas Marvel, I don't feel that way. I feel like people can be like, oh, yeah, it was fine. Maybe it's just so fucking much of it, like that people aren't as, don't have their backs up as much about that kind of thing. But if I'm with Star Wars, I can't buy anything that the fans say, any of the criticisms. I can't take any of them seriously unless I watch it myself.
I mean, I don't think I mean I feel like Star Wars at this point, it doesn't matter what critics say. It doesn't matter what fans say because nobody's right. Nobody's gonna be right. There's really just no measure for that anymore. Like I hated fucking Obi-Wan. I hated that show. I wanted to love it. I was so ready to love it. That's what I wanted. And I can't believe how fucking terrible it was. And I didn't review bomb anything. I watched it with great anticipation, and every episode I was just like, oh, fuck, what happened? How did they fuck this up? I hated Obi-Wan. And I hate that I hated Obi-Wan more than anything. So
Well, that's weird. You know who I feel like they need back in Star Wars? George Lucas.
George fucking
Yeah, I feel like it's never been Star Wars has never been the same without George Lucas. I guess
I feel like Lucas, Filoni, and Favreau are the only people at this point that can like truly kind of replicate like what that is. And that's why I actually have more faith in Ahsoka than I do most any other show, because Filoni is doing it. And I'm like, well, this guy like worked with fucking George Lucas hand in hand for like a decade. Like, who's gonna know Star Wars better than him? You know, like the guy's had a masterclass from Lucas on Star Wars. So, you know, you start getting people that aren't that into these shows, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, I wish Filoni would have done fucking Obi-Wan.
I always find in terms of directing, Bryce Dallas Howard stuff tends to be good. But maybe it's also because she's in the family, kind of, you know, because Ron Howard is definitely in the family for that. You know, I mean, he knows, you know, if you watch the ILM documentary, which is quite good on
It's
Disney
good.
Plus,
It's good. I have watched it.
He's kind of weighing in a lot, and he seems to, you know, have a great investment in it. The sad thing about that documentary, though, is that you're showing how amazing these guys were, but yet none of their work survives in the current versions of Star Wars that are out there.
Oh yeah.
And you can see exactly why. Because Lucas, all he can see are the flaws. That's all he can see. He can't see the ingenuity. And it's funny because they interviewed Ron Howard at one point, and Ron Howard's like, he said it was only about 10%. Sure looked like 100% to me. And he kind of rolls his eyes, you know?
Oh my God, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, the review bombing stuff, what bothers me about review bombing in general is that it's now used as a show was, you know, something like She-Hulk. It was review bombed. So anything you say is wrong because it was review bombed, and all these like angry males attacked it. And I'm like, well, yeah, in a review bomb, sure, but what about afterwards? And a review bomb, it's not. At what point does it stop being review bombed and we start looking at what the actual reviews are? You know, where that starts. And the thing is, like, the reception's not that great. You know, it's just not. And maybe it's just, you know, it's time to like look at the quality of these shows. But in the end, I don't think Disney gives a fuck. I don't think Feige gives a fuck. I think they're just going to continue making what they make, and people are going to continue to tune in. They'll continue to review bomb. They'll continue to review, and it's going to be what it's going to be. But as of yet, they have not released a show that has really blown my fucking mind outside of WandaVision. And since then, it's just kind of been like a whole fucking slew of ho-hum. I'm actually looking forward to Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I think that's going to be a unique movie.
Yeah, I would
just because of
somebody with passion, I think, doing it.
Yeah, like with Coogler involved and with the weight of, you know, Boseman's death, I feel like Wakanda Forever could be something really special. But man, like, there's really nothing that's coming out from Marvel, like when they did their big, you know, reveal at Comic-Con and everything, where I was just like, I want to be excited for Daredevil, but based on the way these shows have gone, I'm like, I don't really have any faith.
Well, you know, he'll have some like young sidekick or something like that that will be passing of the torch.
I just feel like they're gonna fuck it up. They're just gonna ruin this character. Daredevil is, you know, he's a street level gritty character. Netflix had the pulse of that, like the vibe. I just don't feel like they're introducing Daredevil and She-Hulk. Like, okay.
Yeah, it seems like She-Hulk's a little too silly of a universe to work Daredevil into.
I mean, I get that, you know, Matt Murdock is a lawyer, She-Hulk is a lawyer, but like the Daredevil.
Well, I mean, you're gonna really do like a much tamer version of Daredevil, pretty clearly.
Nobody that's ever read a Daredevil comic wants that. So it's fucking retarded. I'm not a fan of that at all. So I talked to a composer this week, Mr. Kevin Kiner.
Oh yeah, he's done some scores, some stuff.
Scores. Most recently for a movie called Samaritan with Sylvester Stallone, of whom we are both big fans. So before we talk about Samaritan, I'm going to launch into my interview with Kevin and hear what he has to say. So here's Kevin and me talking about Samaritan and everything else.
I think we're finished here.
I found him. Samaritan.
You think you live across from a superhero?
Samaritan's dead.
I don't believe you! Are you okay?
I'm cool.
How strong are you?
For some people, it's too late to change the damage they've done.
I want him dead.
Why did you disappear?
So Kevin, welcome to the Beard and the Bald, first and foremost, although you're only getting the beard. I always start whenever I talk to composers. I'm a huge, score nerd. I've always have been. But I'm always very curious how you get your start. What prompted you to become a film composer or movie composer, or I don't know what terminology you want to address to yourself, but I'm always curious how that process begins because I'm fascinated by it.
Well, yeah, as with anything, it's a bit of a roundabout journey for me. I grew up playing in like garage bands, and I mean, we would gig a lot when I was in high school and college, playing like Led Zeppelin, Yes, the Eagles, what have you. And
like a tribute band.
Well, back then it was, covers were what you did if you wanted to work. Now it's a lot more acceptable not to play covers. Back then it really was, if you did original material, you probably didn't work the next dance or the next wedding or whatever it was,
Yeah.
But I have no classical music training, and I was told I could be a doctor or a lawyer. Those were my two choices, by my parents, or my mom mostly, who raised me. So I went to UCLA. I was pre-med, and then I started gigging around LA just for extra money as a guitarist. Kind of fell into a group, and we did Vegas. And there's a thing called music director. If you look like Diana Ross or whoever it is, they have Barbra Streisand, it's David Foster up there, piano. So I was doing that. I was conducting for them. And initially I didn't know how to conduct, which is amazing that they didn't fire me, but whatever. I started doing arrangements for this group, and we traveled all through Asia. That's how I met my wife in the Philippines doing that. We would go out for 6 months at a time, and I would write all these arrangements for like Vegas show bands, which, trumpets, trombones, saxophones, strings sometimes, and like Tokyo had strings. Different places had some strings. So I learned how to arrange, and say if you're doing a song, it doesn't have a trumpet part, you got to kind of make up a trumpet part for that. And so in a way, arranging is a little bit like composing, because you have to make up something that's not there on the record, or there on the tune. Like these acts that I was working for had original songs. So it was kind of a natural evolution then into composing from arranging after I got off the road. And I also saw that it was a relatively stable career relative to like the record business. I think the film and television industry, especially back then, seemed like something, if you had skills, you actually could make a living. Right. Whereas the record business, if you had skills, you also had to get really lucky and have a hit song and have a good band and have, not get in a fight with a singer and ruin your record deal and shit like that, so, yeah, and I think I gravitated towards instrumental music. I heard John Williams's scores to Superman and Star Wars, and man, I was just like, whoa, how does he do that? And so I bought his scores and studied them, and I had real heroes back then in the early 80s, like Ennio Morricone and Jerry Goldsmith and John Williams, John Barry, who wrote, Out of Africa, yeah. and all the Bond stuff, and
John
Somewhere
Barry.
in Time.
I love John Barry.
Yeah. These are all melody guys,
Yeah.
And I'm still a melody guy, and I really, really push for melody.
Awesome. So at this point, you're no stranger to superhero scores. You've worked on Titans, Doom Patrol, Peacemaker, and then you've worked on Star Wars, you worked on Clone Wars, Bad Batch, amongst others, Rebels.
I did Superboy in the 80s. That was my
Superboy. Yes, Superboy in the
series.
80s before all of this craziness.
Yeah, and that was a live action show, and that was the guys, the Salkinds who did the Superman movies.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That was quite intimidating because they just worked with John Williams, and Jerry Goldsmith did Supergirl, the movie. So they had some really good composers they worked with.
Yeah. So when you're approaching something like Samaritan, which is, a feature, what is that? How do you find a way to set that apart from like TV, like a TV score? Is there a difference, or is there a different approach that you take to something like that?
Well, in the specific case, no. I mean, the easiest, quickest answer is I don't feel there is a difference between, composing for film or for television. Now, within that, there are differences because, Samaritan is one movie, so I don't get to do more episodes of Samaritan. Right. Also, with a feature film, you're setting up a template. You're setting up a brand new sound. You're creating this atmosphere. What does he sound like? What is his theme like? What is the instrumentation? What is the vibe? I also do that on Doom Patrol and Titans and all that. At the beginning, you start, establish this is what the sound of the show is going to be. I mean, there's a bigger budget on films. We had a LA orchestra for Samaritan. And there's more pressure on films too. The studio gets involved, and so there's that kind of thing as well. But at the end of the day, you have Sylvester Stallone, who's a marvelous actor, and one of my heroes, and now he's playing a new superhero. Now I co-wrote this with Jed Kurzel, who still is in Australia at the time, and this was really during COVID, early days. And so we did lots of back and forth. I did a lot of studying of Jed's scores. I co-write quite a lot. I've co-written, with David Arnold, with Clint Mansell, with Gustavo Santaolalla. All those guys have a very different, and Jed, very different styles. So I do my homework, and I work very hard at making it a cohesive score that sounds like one person, and one score comes out of there. It's a great learning process for me because
the collaborative work.
Yeah, because there's a new voice, there's a new way of doing things. And, I take it as an opportunity to grow whenever I co-write with somebody.
Sure. Yeah. So for Samaritan, how involved was say Stallone or Julius Avery, like in putting the score together? How did they give you, was there a lot of guidance that came your way in order to put that together, or was it kind of more free reign?
So I have no idea how involved Stallone was. I mean, he may have talked to Julius, but everything that came to Jed and myself came through Julius. Okay. And as that's another difference in films, is the director is extremely powerful and extremely instrumental. And if he's good, which Julius is very good, they really have a great vision for what their project is. And so when you're creating the sound, they're a big part of that. And Jed has a relationship with Julius. He's worked on other projects, and I think they have kind of a shorthand, and a lot of the thematic work and stuff was accomplished that way with Jed and Julius.
Now, did you start off at ground level with this movie? Because I know that it changed hands, like when Amazon acquired MGM. Was that something that was that when you came on board, or were you on board from the drop?
No, that was. I'm pretty sure we were done with it by the time that happened. I don't know exactly when Amazon bought MGM, but I mean, we finished the score like 8-10 months ago, I think.
Okay. So because it wrapped like during like COVID and everything. And I know it was supposed to go theatrical, and then there were delays.
Yeah.
And then eventually they decided to put it on streaming. Which I think is a smart move, really. I think it'll get more eyeballs that way, I think. So it's
I'm seeing tons of posters all over LA. It's very exciting.
Yeah. I mean, yes. I mean, streaming by no means is a death sentence anymore. Streaming is a venue, a very good venue that you can utilize for anything, really. So Kevin, you've had an immense career. You've been around for a long time.
Very
you've got
close
some
to
really
40
unique
years.
credits to your name. I'm just going to name off a few, and I'm curious just kind of like what your thoughts are in those early projects and kind of how they shaped your career. But you did Leprechaun.
Yeah.
Which is
Jennifer Aniston's first gig.
Yeah. A total cult classic at this point. Everybody knows Leprechaun. We talked about Superboy already. I was going to bring that one up too. You also did the David Hasselhoff Nick Fury movie.
Yeah, I did. I forgot.
Which is that. I mean, that's such a crazy, like, random one in there. Like, what was that experience like? Like, I mean, I'm very curious about kind of like these, these older projects that shaped you and made you who you are today in that sense. Like, what are your memories of those projects?
Well, you can't beat David Hasselhoff with an eye patch, right? I mean, that was it was a cool project, and it was a great at that time. It was cool to be involved with Nick Fury, right? And just that whole thing was because it was before Marvel had really been mined the way it is now and stuff. And I mean, I love working on superhero stuff. I love, I work on so much Star Wars and all these things. I really love the fantasy, superhero, otherworldly milieu. I think it's, and you look at some of the really great scores. You look at James Horner's, great score for Star Trek. It gives you a chance to write something bigger than life, and maybe to explore sounds and with the orchestra that you wouldn't be able to say if you were doing like Dead Poets Society or something like that, right. Which again is a great thing to do as well. But there's kind of this bigger than life. I mean, look at how bombastic John Williams was, like with the Imperial March. In another context, that would be ridiculous. Don, 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 don. It's like, oh, come on. You can't,
you're not going to see that in like The New Girl.
Right. You can't have Julia Roberts walking in, to that. So, you get opportunities to really be bold and fantastical. And it's really great. It's just super fun for me.
I mean, it's gotta be cool, like growing up, with John Williams being that, early inspiration. And here you are, with all these Star Wars credits to your name now. I mean, that had to have been fun, just even being able to, kind of pick up some of his score cues and put that into your resume.
Yeah. In a way, I mean, I don't list John Williams as somebody I've co-written with, because, we never get together and write, but I use his themes. I use, I have his scores. I use his orchestration. I use his little tricks. I'm a huge student. I mean, in my opinion, John Williams is head and shoulders above anyone who's ever scored a film ever. And so to be able to mine that gold mine of creativity and ideas. I mean, he's going to be mentioned with Beethoven and Mozart and everybody, 100 years from now. So that's really a great experience, both creatively and just emotionally, because this is my hero, and this is what I wanted to do. This is what I heard, that I was like, wow, I want to do that, and so. And even, on the other hand, like Rocky was a huge deal when when did Rocky come out? Was it the 70s or
70, 76?
God. So, right about, these are all things where, I was like a freshman at UCLA, in sophomore when Star Wars came out. And this was a huge part of my life, Indiana Jones, Rocky, Star Wars, Superman. And now I'm doing a Stallone film, and I'm doing Star Wars, now I'm on Titans. I got Batman and Robin and everybody like that. It's like, God, this is really, it's a dream. People ask me like, well, what's your dream project? I'm like, today, what I'm doing now is absolutely my dream projects.
There really is living the dream. Like that's the end state goal, I think, for everybody, is to find that kind of work that inspires them and keeps them going. So building off that, what other like film music or just in music in general is inspiring you these days? Like, what are you listening to?
I think, so I'll just go with the most recent. First of all, I think Ramin Djawadi did a fantastic job with both Westworld and Game of Thrones, obviously.
He's so good.
I was nominated.
I listen to him by that does not get enough love is Clash of the Titans. His Clash of the Titans score is amazing.
I'm not aware of that, so I'll go out and get that.
Oh man, you got to listen the Perseus tracks. What is it? Oh man, the Perseus main theme is just amazing. I highly recommend it.
Cool. I was nominated for a Primetime Emmy for Clone Wars. Alongside Westworld and Game of Thrones. I'm like, well, crap. And I think Game of Thrones won that year. But that was a truly, a great honor. I forget the guy's name, Teddy something, who just did Severance, which is a very piano heavy score, which is definitely not, it's still otherworldly, and it's almost post-apocalyptical, or I don't know. It's hard to categorize. Very surreal. If you watch Severance, it's a great show. Also,
that's another one on the pile.
That's a really good score. The guy who did Queen's Gambit did a great job with Queen's Gambit. John Powell, Harry Gregson Williams are two of the guys I think are the absolute top of the game right now.
Love Harry. Those guys are great.
Yeah, those guys are insanely good. So that's kind of what I'm digging these days.
Nice. So you said you're working on Doom Patrol right now.
Yep.
What else is on the docket for you that you can say? Anything that's on the horizon that you're particularly excited to get started on?
Well, we're currently working on the season finale of Bad Batch. We're going to record last 3 episodes, the music in Vienna, Austria.
Ooh.
So I'll be leaving for Vienna early September.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. Fantastic orchestra there. Great hall called the Synchron Stage. We're going to record it. I'm working on Titans as well. Titans season 4 is really great. Doom Patrol season 4 is really, really great. I can't really say exactly, but there's an episode in season 4 of Doom Patrol where music is very, very important and is taking up a lot of our bandwidth right now. But it's going to be worth it. So
nice. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. I just learned that I'm coming back for season 2 of Dark Winds, which
cool.
is an AMC show. I did Hell on Wheels for AMC, which I was really proud of. Dark Winds is not the same sound as Hell on Wheels, but it is very organic. It deals with American Indians, Native Americans, and we don't use any of their instruments. We don't do any cultural appropriation or anything like that. But we still have a very earthy kind of desert kind of sound because it's on the reservation. You've got the beautiful monuments and the Navajo lands and stuff. I really have enjoyed working on that show. So yeah, it's Peacemaker's coming back. You know, I'm not sure exactly when they're going to start filming that, but working with James Gunn is a great privilege, and I'm sure that's going to be fantastic because you know, season 1 of Peacemaker was insane.
Oh yeah, that was nuts. That was just how was that experience working with James Gunn? Was that he seems to be very involved in that aspect, like not.
Yeah,
you know, doesn't seem like he'd be dismissive over the music by any means.
No. Yeah, you know, so with any of the James Gunn projects I've seen, you know, his playlist is super important to him.
Yeah.
And he was sending us early on just all these Spotify lists of these bands that I just wasn't that aware of late 80s, early 90s hair metal.
Yeah.
And funny enough, I have a friend who is the drummer for Cinderella, which was one of those bands, you know, and
classic.
And his name's Fred Curry, and he played on Peacemaker for me. And I mean, he's just got that unbelievable arena rock kind of drum sound and sensibility. And so he'll definitely be coming back for season 2, and we're going to use him like crazy.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's so fun. And so, you know, James, to answer your question, really, really knows his music. And, you know, there's a thing because I'm doing score for that, you know, and so you want to be influenced by the hair metal, but you don't want to just do hair metal, because if it was that, he'd pick a record that's, you know, a famous song,
exactly,
or something like that. So the orchestra usually, you know, was combining, so it was a hybrid score or electronic along with the rock and stuff. And then sometimes it wasn't rock at all. One of the approaches we did was when there was an emotional scene, and we have Peacemaker, like the very beginning, episode 1, he gets out of jail and goes to his, you know, shoddy trailer, and you kind of see his broken life that he's got to go back into. And that's a pretty long scene. And, you know, that might be played with a piano in some other scores, but I play that on guitar, and but in an emotional kind of way, and just, you know, really soloistic electric guitar, not acoustic guitar. So approaching things, and that kind of, you know, so that's a way of, like, in using electric guitar, you kind of have the sensibility of the hair metal guys, but not really, you know, but
yeah. Well, there's a lot of emotional beats that got to be hit for Peacemaker too.
Yeah.
Even though it's, you know, it's kind of excessive and it's, you know, funny and violent, there's still some very emotional scenes.
Well, and James Gunn will tell you the story. I mean, it's all the jokes, all the superhero, all the shenanigans are just the icing. The real meat of that show is his journey, Adebayo's journey, all of their journeys, all the, you know, even Vigilante, the idiot, you know, I mean, these are all human beings, you know, who are going through some heavy shit, and kind of going through it together and helping each other out at sometimes, making wrong, terrible decisions at other times, just like we all do in life.
Yeah.
And the music needed to support those emotional kind of crises and moments.
Did you guys have anything to do with the episode where Cena plays the piano? Did you guys have any part in that?
No, that was just him, man. And I think
great Cena on that.
Isn't it amazing? And I mean, he's playing that. That's
freaking wild, man. Like,
yeah.
That was, I mean, that was a cool scene. I to this day, I really didn't have a clear notion of how involved, like, this, like, does Cena give the people's elbow and play the piano? Like, what's going on here?
You know, I'm a sports fan, and I'm not a very good piano player, but I was listening. Kobe Bryant was talking, and he went and learned Moonlight Sonata, and he's not a piano player. But these athletes, they have this discipline. They know how to practice. They know how to, hit the woodshed, as we call it, and as musicians say, and they'll sit for hours and hours and learn. And John Cena is not a pianist, but he plays the piano really well.
That's wild.
And you just see that they have the discipline to practice and learn something that they know nothing about and become good at it, And
it actually makes perfect sense too. That really is. I think it's a great explanation as to all of that. It really makes sense. That we're typically fascinated because we see these people as like a, kind of a one note thing, or not so much one note, but like that's like their specialty. But that makes perfect sense that they would do that.
Yeah, the greats, the really greats, you talk Kobe Bryant, John Cena, all these different cats, they discipline and hard work. I watched the Magic Johnson special, which is just really amazing. I think they call me Magic or something like that. These guys, every facet of their life, they work their asses off. And that's just Schwarzenegger, Stallone, all these guys, they work super hard at whatever they do. Doesn't matter if it's acting, if it's bodybuilding, if it's shooting free throws, if it's learning piano.
Yeah. Amazing. So Kevin, what are you? I always like to end on what you're watching. We do that for the show every week. So I'm just curious. So what are you watching? What are you watching? Movies, TV, whatever. What's on your playlist right now?
I feel for the most part that, television episodic is what's happening, since, Game of Thrones was coming out or something like that. And I watched a show called Devs, Devs, which is absolutely fantastic show. And I mentioned Severance.
Yep.
Another really, really good show. Season 1 of Westworld. I don't know what happened to Westworld, but season 1 is insanely great.
I love season 1. I've never gotten past season 1. I had started season 2, and I was like, I couldn't. I lost the pull. I feel like season 1 is a perfectly encapsulated season.
Yeah, right.
To the point that you really don't. You can continue the story if you want to, but you don't have to.
Yeah. Like I said, Queen's Gambit was fantastic, but that was a while ago. I watched that. What am I watching right? I'm sort of actually. Succession, fantastic.
Succession, yeah.
Brittle, or I don't know how you say his name, Brittle. Really, really one of the really good themes out there, and they use the hell out of it in Succession in such a perfect way, because when that theme starts to play, you just get the vibe of this excessive rich family that it's just it's like, oh, here they go again. They're really gonna F things up in their special dysfunctional idiotic entitled trust fund way. I know people like that too, by the way.
Well, that's it, Kev. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. Great work on Samaritan. And I know we're definitely going to be hearing more from you. You've been steamrolling through this, man. There's like so much work you got out there. It's like a hell of a body of work, man. So honestly, congrats on that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's very gratifying. It's still fooling them, so that's cool.
Thanks so much, Kevin. I appreciate it.
All right, great to meet you. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Cheers, sir.
Yeah.
So that was Kevin for Samaritan. Now, you have not watched Samaritan yet.
No, I haven't seen it yet. I'm watching it soon. It's weird, that whole thing with Samaritan, because it got a big push at CinemaCon in 2020, and the footage they showed was amazing. But I think it's from that one big action scene that everybody seems to really like in the movie.
There is only one big action scene.
Yeah, having talked to Alex Mady, there's apparently one really great moment. He said it was fine. I'm assuming that it's not great if it's going to Amazon Prime and not coming out in theaters. But I'll reserve judgment and watch it for myself.
For me, it was just not good.
I mean, I love Stallone, but there are a lot of Stallone movies that I don't love. I mean, I sure didn't love, there's a bunch of Expendables movies I don't really care about. There's Bullet to the Head. I didn't care for that one at all. And, I mean, he's not infallible. I didn't like Grudge Match at all. I mean, I love Sly, but I won't, say that everything he does is fucking brilliant, because it's not.
Yeah, I think this is one of his rare kind of misfires. I think the intention was good from everybody involved.
He's had a few misfires in his career.
I mean, this is like
less so when he's been the one that's been creatively involved, though. Yeah. It's usually when he's for hire that they're not as good.
And Samaritan does not really have his fingerprints in that sense. Yeah. He really is there as an actor. Yeah. And the script is just not strong enough. It's, a lot of these stories, they try to like bring on the grit, and there's like, oh, it's like a dark superhero story, but be it budget, be it writing, whatever the case may be, it's not fleshed out in any way that you're like, man, this is really fucking great. It's more like, well, this is more of the same. There's a surprise kind of twist at the end, which, you could probably see coming, pretty right off the bat. Once you watch it, the first 15 minutes, you'll probably guess what it might be, but it's fine. Like there's some of the action is okay. Like the big climax at the end, there's a few moments you'll be like, oh shit, that was whoa. But is that enough to be like, oh man, Samaritan was actually really good? No. I wanted to love it. I'm a huge Stallone fan. I love the guy. And I really wanted him to have a win with this, but as I was saying to you before, even on his Instagram, he was like, he's like, oh, so Samaritan, it's going to Prime Video, and hey, it's A-okay. And I think that's about right. It's okay, but it's really ultimately, it's just, you'll watch it once, you'll never need to watch it again. So, Kevin's score, he did a nice job. It's actually a pretty good, really good score for that movie. Probably be an even better score for a better movie. But Samaritan is it's just not very good, and it's unfortunate. Great cast. Philo Asbeck, I don't know if I'm saying his name right or not, from Game of Thrones and upcoming Aquaman 2. And then you have the kid for Ashtray from Euphoria. It's an interesting cast. It's a pretty interesting cast, but not an interesting movie.
That's too bad. I was actually really looking forward to it, but it is where it is.
Hey man, who knows? You might watch it and maybe have a different take. I'd be interested to hear what you think.
Maybe.
There's always a chance you may enjoy it more, but for a superhero movie that's touting itself as being dark and gritty, it's not nearly dark or gritty enough.
Well, I was kind of surprised that it was PG-13. It's not really what I was expecting based on the trailer that I saw, but there you go.
It could have been, I mean, if there's an R-rated version out there, maybe that would up it a little bit. But yeah, it's pretty tame. Pretty tame. So I figure we talk about what we're watching. Is there any movies or anything that you've seen? We'll start with you.
It's funny. I haven't been watching too much lately just because I've been so swamped. I've been watching a lot of TV. And a lot of documentaries. Really, I felt like that's kind of become my new way of relaxing, I guess. And I watched one last night that was just this insane story. So they're making a show for Peacock called Friend of the Family with Jake Lacy, Colin Hanks, and Anna Paquin, and McKenna Grace. That's based on a documentary called Abducted in Plain Sight.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever see that documentary?
No, I know what you're talking about.
So I watched it last night with Laura, and we spent 2 hours screaming at the TV.
For Abducted in Plain Sight or the new one?
No, Abducted in Plain Sight, the documentary.
Oh, okay.
So basically what happened was there was this family, okay, that became really good friends with this neighbor that lived next door to them, who had a family of his own. They were all Mormons, and he became obsessed with the daughter. So he somehow convinced the family that it would be okay if he shared a bed with the daughter. This is the next door neighbor every night, 4 nights a week. He fucked both of the parents. They just relay it. Like the guy was like, the dad is like, I masturbated him and it was the worst thing I ever did. And it's like, dude, it's not the worst thing you ever did. Like, and the mother is like, so, and then he took off with the daughter to fucking Mexico. They didn't call the FBI for 5 fucking days. And then they got the girl back. He married her in Mexico. And then they managed to get her back. And then he got them to drop the charges because he said that he would tell the judge that they were having sex with him. And then, and like, so they do. And then she's obsessed with him because he's told her that like they're aliens and there's all kinds of weird thing. And then if they don't have a child, the world's going to end or whatever. And she totally believes it. And then he's like, getting calling the girl all the time, but they're letting him contact the girl. And then the mom starts a sexual relationship with this guy who married her daughter, who was 12 years old and was molesting her daughter. She starts having sex with him, and then she's like, well, I don't know what I was doing. And the whole time they're kind of trying to get your sympathy. They're like, oh, well, he manipulated us. And it's like, these people are fucking they're either criminally negligent or they were basically selling their daughter to this guy for sexual favors. Like it's very disturbing, the documentary. And this woman now, I mean, she's been fucked over by everybody in her life. And she's like very positive. And she's like, oh, I have a great relationship with my parents. I taught them to forgive themselves and now I forgive them. And it's like, fuck that. These parents do not deserve forgiveness. They're evil people. And the documentarian, so it was based on a book that the family wrote, that the mother of the family wrote, right? And in the book, they did not reveal the fact that the mother and the father were both fucking this guy.
Oh, wow.
The documentarian found out about it because she read the FBI transcripts and she called them on it in the interviews and got them to admit to it. And like, because that's not the whole story, right?
Much more going on. That's good.
Yeah, a lot more going on. Anyway, and it's like, you shouldn't judge these people. But it's like, fuck that. These people, I'm
judging.
It made me so angry, this documentary. But I mean, it was very well done, and this director is excellent, Sky Borgman. I think she did a great job with it. But I think that the girl ultimately, unfortunately, I think she's lying to herself when she's like, oh, we were all manipulated and my family is working through something. Like, I think you tell yourself certain lies to make your life easier to live.
Yeah.
And I think that that's unfortunately the situation that she's in now. And I really hope that this new show, when it comes out, digs deeper into that aspect of it, because like it's hard to comprehend watching it that she could even have a relationship with them. But I also think, she's ultimately lying to herself, and I think that she's a victim of everybody, including her parents.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was a pretty fascinating documentary.
I just watched a trailer for the new one they have coming out this morning, with the mom that killed her 2 kids and is in jail. Fuck, I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, I saw that pass today too. Yeah, I mean that is the thing though. Netflix, a lot of these documentaries are very compelling and very watchable, right?
Man, I've ever since Making a Murderer, it's been a cottage industry for them there.
And I watched The Confession Killer recently, about the guy that Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer was based on. He confessed that everybody thought he killed 300 people. He didn't kill anybody. Like, it was all bullshit. He was just confessing. He was telling people what they wanted to hear, and it was a way for the authorities, the Texas Rangers and stuff, to close cases. But there was no evidence that he actually did any of this shit. It was easier to believe that he was like the worst serial killer of all time. The guy had like a 69 IQ. Like, it was unbelievable. And the guy, his associate, is the one that they think killed Adam. The guy, America's Most Wanted.
Adam Walsh.
I don't think he did, though. I don't think he did kill Adam Walsh. I don't think that's ever been solved either. I think that it's just the parents want to think it's been solved because it's easier to think that than to think that the guy got away with it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's troubling watching these things, but you also get a notion when you watch these documentaries, the lies people tell themselves to make it through the night, and to just go on living.
Or just to remain sane in many ways, to find some kind of closure when there is none.
Yeah.
I can't even being in that situation.
But yeah, no, I watched that. And I've also been watching a really good show called The Bear.
That's the cooking show, right?
Yeah, it's about what's going on in this kitchen, and it's what the guy from Nameless and the guy who played Desi on Girls, and it's an Oliver Platt, and it's great. You got
that's what everybody's saying. It's another one of those shows I keep hearing about.
Yeah, Jeremy, He suggested it to me, and it's a really really good show.
Nice.
How
Yeah.
about you?
I've watched quite a few things. So I was going to mention I started reading Heat 2.
Oh, I have too. I've started reading Heat too. I just started it though. I'm not very far.
I'm about 100 pages in, and it is electric. I don't know any other way to describe it. Like, I love it.
Well, that's a good way of describing Michael Mann's stuff.
It reads Michael Mann, and like the character of Vincent Hanna like reads like Al Pacino. Like, I'm watching it and I'm hearing Al Pacino's voice say these lines, and he writes
Which is
it.
why I think it can only ever really exist as a book, though, because I mean, who would you get that's an Al Pacino that could play that part if you were to do Heat?
But here's the thing. It flashes back. It goes back to 1988.
Which I understand. That would be easier to do the younger version of Vincent Hanna.
Yeah.
But then how do you do the Vincent Hanna from like, Heat, the middle-aged Vincent
Yeah,
Hanna?
I mean, and yeah, that would be tricky. Apparently he wants Adam Driver to do it. So
I mean, I could see it. I think Driver's not a bad choice. I mean,
I'd love to see Driver take on a Vincent Hanna style role. You know what I'm saying? I think that would be cool to see him be kind of like this edgy, fucked up cop. I think that just lives to be a cop. I think would be pretty interesting to see Driver do it. And I know that he's working with Driver on the Ferrari movie now, so it's like one of those things where he's like, oh man, everybody seems to fall in love with Driver when they work with him, like Ridley Scott did with House of Gucci and
Last
Duel. So I've been reading that. I think it's fucking great. I've also been watching Primal on HBO Max with the animation by Genndy Tartakovsky of Samurai Jack, and Primal is so fucking great. So season 2 is out now, and that show is fucking awesome. It's brutal, it's bloody, there's no fucking dialogue, and it is amazing. I feel like it is the most economical style storytelling. Like, if you want to learn how to tell a story, like if that's something that you're aiming to do, to kind of see how it's done without a shred of dialogue, is amazing what they achieve. Although there is one episode they did this in season 2 that takes place in the 1800s, because normally it takes place like in this kind of prehistoric era, and it actually does have dialogue. It's the only episode out of 2 seasons that has any dialogue, and it's amazing as well. So if you're looking for a great animated show that's like pulls no punches, Primal is fucking badass. Like, I cannot recommend it enough. The other show I've been watching, or I already watched on Netflix, which they just dropped a new special episode, is Sandman.
I've seen parts of it, but I haven't actually sat down and watched it yet.
So I've never read the Sandman comics. I've always been curious, but I've never read them. But the show is amazing, and I cannot recommend the Sandman enough. It's a little woke too, and I still love it. Like, I don't even mind. Like, some of the stuff is okay, but it's great. The storytelling is fucking fantastic. It looks, I mean, this is one of those shows like where Netflix, like, they put the money into it. And this is where apparently Neil Gaiman is saying, I don't know if we'll get a season 2 if people aren't watching this. Like, there's so much money put into the show. I don't know if it's going to happen. But it's great. Sandman is fucking awesome. It has kind of a narrative story arc that they took from the comics that follows through the episodes, but then it branches off, and it has like these one-off stories as well. So you don't have to like seriously invest in like this long convoluted narrative. You can branch off, and it has these other different stories. And I find that just really cool. It plays like a comic book in that sense, like a series. So I can't recommend it enough. I think Sandman is amazing. I watched Everything Everywhere All at Once on the plane.
Oh wow! Finally
coming back, and it's amazing. It's I'm late to the party.
Who else really liked it was Berge. Actually, we were talking about it. We just recently too. It does seem like it's a movie that like everybody is kind of won over by, and it is a really good movie.
It's amazing. It's so well done. I mean, it's a little like kind of like saccharine towards the end, but it's good. It's like just a very
it's very well acted. Michelle Yeoh is excellent, but I also really love Short Round.
Ki Hai Kwan is so fucking good. Like, I just think it's great. I hope it opens up the doors for more roles for him.
I feel like he should potentially get like a supporting actor nomination. this year.
Yeah, I mean, really, Michelle Yeoh deserves some kind
Yeah.
of recognition.
Oh yeah. Oh no, she's
giving
great.
out awards. Like, you know, anyways, I thought it was just fantastic, and I watched it on a shitty plane with awful fucking headphone jack that I could, I could only hear like barely through one ear, and I loved it. So I can't wait. I'm gonna buy it and watch it again, at home and enjoy it. But I just thought it was great. So I know I'm late to the party, but I fucking loved it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it too.
And the only other thing I saw, I went to go see Dragon Ball Super last night with my
Wow, it made
son.
like $5 million, so I guess you weren't the only one.
We saw it in 4DX, as my theater has that now, and I still find 4DX fairly annoying. It's got a, I don't know, like a silly theme park kind of quality to it.
What even is 4DX?
So 4DX is where you sit in the chair and the seats move, and it blows air on you and squirts water at you and like sprays the back, like air sprays the back of your head. Like, oh, what the fuck?
We don't have that here.
It's I mean, it's silly. It's dumb. But I will say there's parts of it that is kind of cool. And, I've never seen a Dragon Ball Z cartoon in my life. So this was my first ever. My son has obviously watched tons of it, and he was, the catalyst for us going to see it, and he loved it.
Okay.
But for me, like the story is like watching a kid's cartoon after school. Like, it's so baseline, silly, like with goofy shit. But the fighting stuff and everything in the anime I thought was really fucking cool. But like story-wise, it's one thing I don't understand about anime and manga is the stories frequently they're so silly. They're childish.
Nonsense.
And it's hard for me to, like, I want to invest in this because it's such a huge thing that's blowing up, but the stories are so fucking silly. It's hard for me to be like, oh yeah, this is really great. It's like the animation is amazing, but like that's kind of where it begins and ends with me. I'm just like, the story though is just like so goofy. And maybe it's a cultural difference, maybe it's a Japanese thing where I'm just like not getting it. I can accept that. Like, maybe I'm just not getting it, but it's like, it's just so fucking goofy. But otherwise it was an experience, I don't have any trash to talk about Dragon Ball. Otherwise I thought it was, it's pretty fun. I'm just not sold on, like, 4DX I find to be distracting. Like, they're jumping you around in your chair and I'm like, I'm trying to watch the action. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Oh fuck, that was awesome. But you don't get like 2 seconds to like hold still and see what the fuck is going on. So yeah, it gets a little obnoxious. So yeah, there you go. There you have it. And that's all I've watched. So there.
You should go see Beast. Beast is really good.
I don't know if I'll go to the theater, but I'll watch it.
Yeah, that's the problem though.
I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Ah, well.
Wait, I went and saw Dragon Ball. Come on. I got to get some points for that. Did we talk about Bullet Train? I don't know if we talked about that. I saw Bullet Train as well.
We did. We talked about Bullet Train.
I liked Bullet Train, but I didn't love it.
Yeah, I feel the same. Fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was, it was good, but I don't need to go back to the theater to see it. No. So we got a couple questions, not many, just 3. Shall we take them? Let's do it.
Sure.
So Shemp, biggest surprise movie of the year so far and biggest letdown of the year so far.
I mean, probably the biggest surprise movie of the year is Top Gun, right?
Without question. What's interesting is I wrote this article yesterday and I had to do a link to, another article. And I went back and saw that we had written on Screen Rant, I think it was earlier, maybe last year, the headline was why Top Gun Maverick won't make as much as Ghostbusters Afterlife.
Well, I mean, that's fine. I mean, people kind of okay, but look, otherwise though, besides Top Gun, like, I'd say that Everything Everywhere All at Once was a very pleasant surprise because I wasn't expecting that to be amazing. But I also really loved Elvis. I feel like a lot of people didn't really get
I loved Elvis. I thought Elvis was great.
Yeah. Just Elvis was great. That performance, especially by Austin Butler.
He's so good. He's amazing. Yeah.
There have been other good movies that have come out this year. But I mean, for me, those are kind of, that's kind of sticking in my head a little bit.
Yeah, Top Gun Maverick for me is definitely I guess I kind of went in with lower or just kind of middling expectations, but I just don't think I'd ever anticipated it being that great. I would say the biggest letdown for me would be Thor Love and Thunder. I really thought that it would be as fun as Thor Ragnarok, which I loved. And I was really expecting like, oh man, it's like a slam dunk. It'll be another Taika Waititi, fun romp. And it was just so stupid. The more I think about Thor Ragnarok or Thor Love and Thunder, the more I dislike it.
I think probably for me, letdown, even though I didn't hate it, was probably Gray Man, just because I was really hoping that I'd be surprised. And
which one?
Gray Man.
Oh, Gray Man.
Not, not even that I didn't like it, but it was just that it was one of those things. I was hoping that I'd be pleasantly surprised and that there'd be this new amazing action franchise, and I feel like it was just kind of ultimately disposable.
I still think that Gray Man, everything about it would have been changed if it was R-rated instead of PG-13.
Yeah, well,
because it felt like a superhero movie. It's directed like a superhero movie.
Well, that makes me think though that the Russos, especially after having seen Cherry, that they have one thing that they do.
Yeah, I hate to agree with you, but you're probably right.
They're not as good as I thought they were.
They're great at superhero movies.
But that's all that they're good at.
Yeah,
certainly not good at war dramas.
No, Cherry was exceptionally disappointing.
From the seen a lot of movies. Like I feel it's always in this. Oh, it's always this scene. It's just like this other scene, this other movie. And it's like, like Cherry. That was every time they used music in certain shots. Like, because this was used in Carlito's Way, and it was like, let's rip it off. And I just kind of feel like that. Ultimately, they're not great directors. I thought maybe they were, but they're not.
Yeah, I mean, I think they did amazing work with the Marvel films that they did, but I just haven't been impressed with anything. I wasn't impressed with anything they did before. I thought Yumi and Dupree sucked. I never saw Welcome to Collinwood, and I hated Cherry for the most part, and Gray Man was okay. Like had a few moments, but overall was just wasn't there. Austin, what's an iconic role that you think is overrated, and what's one role you think isn't considered iconic but should be? Iconic role that's overrated. Oh man, I know that there's a few out there. I definitely feel Austin always has these questions that are like good brain busters. Let's see, an iconic one that should be iconic. Man, that's just a great, such a good question. That's a hard one to just pull right out of the top of your head. I feel like, there's certain roles I feel like I'm always like reaching back to Point Break, but yeah, I feel like Swayze's Bodhi doesn't get enough love.
Yeah, I would agree. With that. I think that, to be honest, like, and I wouldn't want to say that it's overrated either, but if we're talking about Swayze, it's interesting that people are kind of obsessed with Dalton from Roadhouse, which I like. But I mean, I think the best performance that he gave in an action movie was Bodhi. I think Bodhi was a brilliant performance in a brilliant movie. Whereas I think Roadhouse was a really fun performance in a really fun movie. But it's iconic in kind of a campy way. And I feel like Bodhi, it's like legitimately a great performance in a great movie. And
it's a very complex character because you want to love him. You want to like say that he's a great guy, but he's not, he's like,
no, you want, every time I watch that movie, I want it to end differently. Yeah. And I want him to get away even still at the end of the movie, like that's the thing, even though he's bad, because he's a legitimately bad guy at the end of the film. Yeah. Like, and I think that was brave too. I think they went all in on making him the villain at the end, whereas I think a lot of movies now, they would just do what they did in Fast and Furious, where they made him an anti-hero and then he's actually a really good guy in the end. He's all these redeeming qualities. Whereas, I think at the end of Point Break, the guy senses that everybody's closing in on him and that he's going to lose his freedom, and he'll fucking kill anybody who gets in his way, and he'll do whatever he has to do. And at the end of the day, he doesn't care about his friends. He doesn't care about anybody. He just wants to get off.
Yeah.
And I think that's the criminal mindset, that at the end of the day, that's why he's ultimately a criminal.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's, it makes him a compelling character all around.
Yeah, it is. And I think his performance is amazing. And I also think that Reeves's Johnny Utah is one of his great performances. And I think it's a shame that we've never gotten Johnny Utah,
Johnny
like the
Utah.
spinoff. But I don't want to see it unless Catherine Bigelow does it. And it's
I would love to have Catherine Bigelow and Reeves back, and something
and done on the same level as Point Break.
Yeah. With some great action scenes. Like I say this, I was talking to my wife about this too. I was like, out of all the female directors that have like come around, in even in recent years, the only one that I've ever seen and been convinced that understands action and they can just deliver it is Bigelow. Like, she is a unicorn in that sense. Like, she's amazing. She's better than most male directors in that sense when it comes to action. And it's just it's a shame she's not pumping out more,
Yeah. But, I think she kind of lost interest in action movies, it seems, which is too bad.
It's a
like,
shame. I mean, even Zero Dark 30, she did a great job.
Like, it's just kind of,
she's like, fuck this shit. But I mean, why are they not hiring people like her, for like these, they keep hiring like younger and younger and like people that have no experience with action to do movies. Like, I would have much rather seen a Catherine Bigelow directed Birds of Prey. I'm telling you right now, it would have been a better movie.
Wouldn't do something like that though. That's too low rent for her.
But she could, but I mean, hey, give her control. I bet she'd make something fucking badass.
Yeah.
Like, I'm all for it. Last question, Abraham Rodriguez. Some DCU fans are seeing the Affleck Aquaman cameo and shelving of Batgirl to mean Affleck is back as the DCU Batman and that the Snyderverse is restored. I think
the Snyderverse is not restored, but I do think that Affleck might be making headway into coming back as Batman to some extent. I think they were planning on doing it with Keaton, but at the end of the day, Keaton's a guy in his 70s who's not really committed to the whole thing. And if they want to go down the Marvel role, I think they're going to need somebody that, is mature enough that he has gravitas, but is also, fairly committed. And I think that with Affleck, I think Affleck's a smart guy. I think he knows that he could become bankable and he could, get the projects made that he wants to make if he plays ball with Warner Brothers. So I think he's willing to go do a Batman movie here and there.
Why not play that card, right? Like, do one for them, one for you kind of thing.
Yeah, and it's a good young way enough to do it still makes sense. Like, he's in his 50s. And if you want to have an older Batman mentor, it's kind of why not do it? Why not do Affleck? But I don't think the Snyderverse is being restored. No.
Well, I mean, and what does that mean to have the Snyderverse restored anyways? Like, it's not exactly erased. You know what I'm saying? No. Like, I don't really understand, like,
you might dip back into it at some point. Who knows?
I feel like people are like saying the Snyderverse is back and that they're going to do a sequel to Justice League. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. I just don't think it's physically possible to do that at this point. And I think, you just have too many problem areas. You got Ray Fisher's on the outs with WB. You got Henry Cavill's not officially back as Superman. Who knows what's going on with that? You got all this trouble with Ezra Miller.
I feel like Cavill will be back at some point.
I hope that he is, but I just feel like it's just so fucking odd that he's not. But I feel like the one person that could continue to come back is Affleck. And I feel like, just as you said, Keaton is pretty old and they want him to be like this, Samuel L. Jackson, Nick Fury style character throughout the DCU.
At 71, is that really what he wants to be doing for the rest of his?
I don't think he only came back just to have some fun, and it was kind of like,
I do hope we get his Flash movie, and I hope that he gets a fitting send off, and I'd love to see another Keaton Batman role, but I just don't see him being sprinkled in here and there as the connective thread. Like, I think probably Affleck is your guy for that.
It makes way more sense for Affleck to do that. And if he's coming into Aquaman just as like, oh, I came in for a day to film a scene as Bruce Wayne, that's okay, but hey, maybe he comes back and does that solo Batman movie that, he was talking about doing before. Maybe that still happens. Who knows? I feel like Affleck coming back as Batman is something I would put money on, well above Zack Snyder coming back to the DC.
I mean, I think Affleck, I think when he stepped down, he was fighting. He had various problems, and I think he's probably on a more even keel now, and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, the guy just got married. He's like kind of like getting his life together. He's just he just directed this Nike movie. He's finishing up that, and it's like, maybe I will still be Batman. But it's like, I mean, he does keep fucking with us, though. He's kind of like
easy paycheck for him. Why not go do it? Have fun for a few months, and then. But I don't know if I don't think we'd see a solo Batman movie with him. I don't think he's going to go all in on it again. But I could see him kind of being sprinkled in here and there as a supporting character and showing up, and everybody's, oh, wait, it's Batman. Like, that's about it. But For me, the movie that I'm excited though for is Joker Folie à Deux. I love the fact that it's a musical. I love the fact that Gaga's in it as Harley Quinn. That sounds like something interesting.
Yeah, I think it. Oh, and I'm sure it'll be amazing. To be honest,
Yeah,
I don't see how it's
yeah.
anything less than that. You know,
Like that is when I heard that was being done that way. That I got excited for that because that's a bold take.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. I think it's great. I think it's great. I think it's weird. I think that oh, we're
In the
trying to do all
best
this.
way, weird in the best way.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, I think they're trying to do this connective tissue thing, this 10-year plan. Yet they're still doing these outlier movies, and I think that that's going to be that could potentially be an issue. And I think it's also a little odd that they haven't officially greenlit a sequel to the Batman.
I think it'll happen eventually. I mean, the movie is an unqualified. It is a success, no matter how you spin it.
It is a success, but it's also, Batman v Superman made more than the Batman. So I don't know. Like, it'll be interesting to see. I'm kind of like
Batman v Superman, though, it came out a month later on HBO Max, and it was still the pandemic, and people were not going to movies as much. I think it did well, all things considered, very well.
Yeah, I mean, it did well, no doubt, but it's interesting.
I think if it came out now, it would make even more money, to be honest.
You think so? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, Top Gun Maverick is a much better movie. Just no getting around it. I would watch Top Gun Maverick over the Batman any day of the week.
I'm sure that they're going to make the Batman too. I think they'd be foolish not to be honest.
I don't know. I wouldn't be that heartbroken. I would take an Affleck Batman movie over the Batman 2. I know that may sound crazy to some, but I would take that. I would. That's just me.
You're old and you want to see a Batman that's older than you. That's why. Same thing. I kind of want to see a Bond that's older than me, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to be younger. It's going to be younger than both of us. That's for sure. Younger.
Yeah, it is what it is.
I would not be surprised if fucking Tom Holland is cast as Bond. Who the fuck knows?
I kind of want to see them. Let's give Pierce Brosnan another chance.
I'm like, dude, I'm with you. Let's do it.
Let's do one more. Let's see. Let's give him a good way to close it off. Old Bond. I want to see that.
Yeah, for real. Give him one. You wanted to kill off a Bond. You should have killed off Brosnan. Brought him back for like one last mission and have him like die for his king and country. I think that would have been cool. Like Daniel Craig dying, I felt was kind of silly. It was like, okay.
I still think it's a soft death, and I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back.
I don't know. I saw it. You see his body get blown apart. Like,
I feel like there's a
he might have walked it off. He is James Bond
swimming away, and the eye closes in. He's got amnesia. He doesn't remember who he is.
Wait, they already did that in Skyfall. You can't do that again. Yeah. I feel like Daniel Craig is just so fucking happy that they killed him. Like, he's just like, that's his personality.
That's the only way he came back. Yeah,
he's
the
like,
only
fuck this fucking guy.
Yeah,
I want him to die. All right, well, that's it. That's it for us this week, this month. Yeah, we're kind of jumping in and out as far as the show goes for anybody that's curious about, what our consistency levels are. The show is fluid right now. We'll see how things go. There's always changes on the horizon and, different things coming up. So we'll dip in as we can. And that's just kind of where we're at right now. So but we appreciate you guys listening. We appreciate you joining us and giving us your questions and your time. And I hope that you guys have a great week. Remember to love what you love.